Today is April 12th, 2025, and welcome to the 434th episode of the So Video Games podcast. Here on the show, I talk about any game at all, including new stuff, old stuff, and anything in between. My name is Brad Galloway, and I'm the one-man host of this show. I'm also the editor of GameCritics.com, a website that uses the full range of review scores from 0 to 10, while also offering full accessibility info on every review that we publish. Hello, and thank you for joining me today. It's a good day in the neighborhood here, and going to get things rolling real quick. Not going to do a whole lot of lollygagging here at the top of the show. I usually kick things off with housekeeping, but there's just not a lot to talk about this week. The only thing I think I want to mention is not really even game-related, but more of a cautionary tale. I just noticed that I'm starting to get charged for Uber One, which apparently people tell me is a subscription fee that you pay if you want to get cheaper Uber rides. The weird thing about this is I haven't had an Uber ride in like more than 5 years. It's not even on my phone anymore. I don't use Uber whatsoever, so it's really strange that out of the blue, I'm getting charged for Uber One despite not being an Uber customer for so long. So the only reason I bring this up is because I did a little research, and it seems like, I'm not sure what's happening, but Uber is doing this to a lot of people. There's plenty of people who have ridden Uber in the past who are now getting charged for Uber One without their knowledge. I just started getting it, so I've only paid once or twice before I caught it. I see a bunch of other people who have started getting charged in the last month or two, and I heard tell of at least one or two people who have been paying for like more than a year or at least several months. It's like a $9.99 charge, which, you know, isn't the world's largest fee, but that adds up, and it's $10 that I don't want to give to Uber in the first place. And if you don't know you're being charged, you know, before you know it, that's like $100 or something like that. So take a look at your bank statement, you know, your charge account or whatever it is that you do to keep track of your money, and just take a quick look and make sure that if you have ever ridden Uber in the past, that you are not unwittingly paying Uber now. Fuck those guys. All right, I guess that's it. Let's take a look at the agenda here. Let's get right into Circle Backs, where I circle back to things I have covered in depth on previous episodes. Not going to give you all the details on each one right now, but this is just a quick update to let you know if my thoughts have changed on something for better or for worse after spending more time with it. First update here is Split Fiction. Still playing this with the wife, still largely enjoying it, although I got to be honest, I kind of wonder if maybe I enjoyed the cooperative action in It Takes Two, which was developer Hazelight's previous game, more than this one. I feel like in Split Fiction, even though the story is better, and boy, the script in It Takes Two was terrible. It was offensive, and it was just really poorly written. It was a bad script, but the gameplay was solid. I feel like there was a little bit more variety in It Takes Two. In Split Fiction, I feel like the stuff is fine, but it's kind of like, there hasn't been a lot of like really weird stuff lately. There's been like weird themes and weird graphics. We just were animated teeth that were covered in toothpaste a second ago. We are space marines. We are fantasy warriors. We were pigs. I mean, we've been a few things. And so from that aspect, I think it's been fairly creative. But the action, there hasn't been a lot of like really like crazy stuff that I feel like we had some of in It Takes Two. So I don't know. I'm feeling kind of like okay on it. Like I said, the script is inoffensive in Split Fiction, which is a step up from It Takes Two. But you know, the bosses in Split Fiction, I think all of them uniformly have too much life, and I think they're all a little bit too difficult. I think most of the mini games, especially once you get past the opening scenes in Split Fiction, are all just tuned up a little bit too much. Like they are just like one notch into irritating territory. And as such, I have not recommended it to anybody yet. I was going to, but I think it would start fights with couples, or if there's one person who is a better gamer than the other, I think that the person who was less skilled would have trouble keeping up. It's not like crazy hard or anything, but I feel like for a co-op kind of fun time game like this is supposed to be, gameplay wise anyway, I think it's just a little bit too hard, which I find kind of unpleasant. So it's okay. We're having fun. I think the wife and I are both kind of like maybe maxing out on it. I think we're perhaps ready for credits to roll soon. So we'll see what happens. I do want to give credit though. There was one scene in Split Fiction so far, which the wife and I both felt like was pretty well done in terms of writing. And we actually was like, okay, that was a pretty good wrap up. And that got some character beats going. So that was pretty good. In general, it's been pretty generic, but that one scene did kind of get somewhere. So kudos to that. Not going to spoil anything. But yeah, I think we're ready to wrap it up and move on. I think it's running out of juice a bit. So let's see. What else do I have to circle back on? Monster Hunter Wilds. Still playing it. I am thoroughly in the just grinding for better gear phase. I just completed the campaign all the way. For those that don't know, in recent years, Monster Hunter has followed the same kind of pattern of giving you a low rank and a high rank. You start the game in low rank. You have all the regular Monster Hunter action, but then you get to the boss of low rank, credits roll, and if you want to bounce, that's a good point for you to bounce. But if you're in it for the long haul, there's like usually another part of the campaign called high rank, where all the monsters get harder. You get a bigger variety of monsters, bigger variety of things. And to be clear, it's not just the low rank content, but harder. There's usually quite a bit more, way more monsters, way more armor, way more weapons. The game really like opens up and blossoms in high rank. So you're only getting a fraction of the content in low rank, but I do appreciate they give you an out if you're not like, down for the entire experience. So you can get in, play something, roll credits, feel like you're good, and then, leave with a positive feeling about it, which is wise. But I just finished the high rank campaign, which is good. And now that there's not really much like story content left, there's a few side quests I could do, but nothing really major. I'm just grinding for materials and weapons. I was grinding the last boss. It's called Zoshia. It's like this weird looking white dragon covered in feathers, but underneath, once you knock the feathers off, it's black and grotesque underneath, and it has all sorts of weird energy powers. Pretty cool monster, and when you kill it enough times, you can make the armor from it, and the armor reflects that. The armor is like white on the outside, but when you take a look, there's like black grossness underneath it. Like the legs and the chest might be black and gross, but the outer part, like the shoulder parts and the arm parts and the cowl parts are all like white feathers. Good dichotomy and design there. Pretty interesting looking. So I just made that armor just for fun. Made a couple of the weapons from the Zoshia, and those are pretty good too. So I'm just kind of just playing just for funsies now, just killing whatever monsters and making whatever weapon I feel like. And I did complete the entire game with the great sword and the heavy bowgun. I think debatably people say that those are two of the hardest weapons to use. Not that they are necessarily more complex or anything like that than other weapons, but they're kind of more cumbersome. I think they have less mobility. You have to be a little bit more intentional. I think you're more vulnerable in some ways. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I do speak to a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I like Monster Hunter, but I hate the great sword, or I hate the heavy bowgun because you can't move very much, and you're stuck and you're committed to animations and stuff." And maybe that's true, maybe it's not, but I enjoy both those weapons very much. Those are my go-tos, and I liked them a lot. Now that I am kind of just messing around, I was dipping into the bow a little bit, which I think is kind of fun. It feels a little bit limited though. You're kind of doing like this one trick where you pepper monsters with explosives and then you shoot the explosives to blow them up, which is actually quite powerful. But I feel like the bow is a little bit of a one-trick pony. I'm going to have to watch some tutorials to see if I'm missing anything about it, but it's still not too bad. A lot of mobility on that one. You can dodge and stuff pretty well, which is great. But I also started getting into the lance, which I really like the lance a lot. And I think this is also another like quote-unquote difficult weapon to use. You have a giant shield and a giant lance, and you can just tank the fuck out of like literally anything. When you put that shield up, you can take basically any hit in the game, like giant fireball, monster crashing into you, tail whip, poison spike, like anything, and you can shrug it off. It does like basically no damage as long as you've got enough stamina to tank the hit. And you might take a couple pixels worth of damage, but you can literally I was fighting the last boss. Giant dragon, rears back, does this enormous like electrical surge followed by an explosion followed by a fireball, and I'm like literally in its face, tanking the whole fucking thing. Does nothing to me. And as soon as he shoots his shot, I like do a counter hit with the lance and stab him right in the fucking face. It's a pretty awesome feeling. I like the lance a lot. The downside to the lance is that it probably has the least mobility out of any weapon in the entire game. When you're carrying that lance and shield, you're so heavy, you're just shuffling. Like you're taking one or two small steps. It's hard to put away. If you need to run anywhere, you're basically planted. You're almost like a turret almost. So you get where you need to go and you hold your ground and you just like tank the fuck like crazy. but it's not something where you can just get out of trouble quickly if you make a bad call. So I think there's definitely plus and minuses to it, but I think it's really fun. I find that the lance gameplay is really rewarding. I will probably mess around with the other weapons as well, to some extent. I'm not a big fan of like the transforming weapons, like the charge blade or the switch axe. My wife likes those quite a bit. I know those are pretty popular with people, but not my jam. But we'll see. We'll see what else happens. But at this point, I'm probably 65 hours in, and I feel like I've definitely got my money's worth out of it. And I'm still playing. There's more updates to come, more content to come. So it'll be kind of something that I pick at for the rest of the year. But I think for now, I'm probably done with Monster Hunter, at least in the sense of hitting it really hard to get somewhere with it. I think now I'm just for funsies. So back half of the game, definitely much better than the front half. So there you go. Monster Hunter Wilds. And this brings us to the new portion of the show where I talk about stuff I haven't talked about before. Let's kick it off with one that is kind of a critical darling right now, and it's really making the rounds. Blue Prince, Prince, which is obviously a play on word for blueprints, as in the plans that you use to build a house. This is, I guess, an indie joint. I think it was largely made by one person or maybe just a really small team. And it was shown at one of the big showcases recently. Maybe it was the PlayStation showcase, I think it might have been. It caught a lot of people's attention, including my own. Looked really interesting. I didn't know much about it other than what we saw in the trailer at that time, where it seemed to be like a person going into a house where the rooms were like moving and you had to figure out like what was going on in order to like claim an inheritance. And I think that's largely true. Although now that I have had game code, and by the way, I did get a code from the publisher to cover this here on the show. Thank you very much. Full disclosure. I think it is that thing, but it's also much more than that thing, for better and for worse. Okay, so what is Blueprints exactly? Like I just said, once you get into it, it is revealed that your great uncle was, I don't know, rich and eccentric, as all great uncles are. He builds this mansion somewhere, and he wants to give you he's died, and he wants to give you the mansion and all the lands and everything in the house. He wants to give it to you, but he says there's a condition. The condition is there are 45 rooms in the mansion, but that's not true because there's actually 46. And he's like, you cannot have this inheritance unless you are able to find the secret 46th room. It's not on any blueprints. It's not in the plans. None of the builders know that it's here, like whatever. Like it's a super top secret room that doesn't show up anywhere. And it's up to you to figure out where that room is based on the clues that your uncle has left for you. And if you find the 46th room, then you can have the house and the inheritance and it's all good. Everything works out. If you do not find it, at the end of a certain period of time, I forget how many days it is, but it's a time limit. Then you do not get it. And the uncle's like, I know you can figure it out. This isn't some kind of, I'm not trying to screw you. He's like, I know you can do it. I believe in you, blah, blah, blah. And then whatever, he's dead. It doesn't matter. So that's the premise. When you get to the house, this is played in first person. You go in the opening foyer. The foyer is the main room that you always start in, and it's always in the middle of the house. The house takes the shape of a grid, 5 squares by 9 squares for a total of 45 squares. And it's kind of like a rectangle shape, basically. And so you go into the foyer, and from the foyer, you've got a left door, a middle door, and a right door. And how this works is you choose whatever door you want. And as soon as the door opens, you get a choice between 3 other rooms. So basically, the game is randomly generating what rooms you get to pick from, and then you must choose one of them. You can't back out of it. Sometimes you can re-roll the rooms, or you might have an item or something that like lets you have a different choice. But for the most part, whatever 3 rooms you get offered, you must choose one. So you want to keep in mind, where are you in the house? And thankfully, the game always lets you look at a quick map. So you can be like, how far over am I? Where on the grid am I? And so you want to maximize the number of rooms you go into. There's a couple of limits. Some of the rooms are like dead ends, and some of the rooms are locked, and some of the rooms have doors that only go a certain way. So it's very possible, because of the RNG, to not visit every room in the house. I mean, your first run in the game is probably going to be like 10 rooms and you dead end and you're stuck and you're done. You got to leave and come back, reset the game. And between attempts, everything in the game gets erased. So you don't carry anything over from day to day. Each day is a brand new run and you start fresh in the foyer again, doing the exact same thing you did last time. So let's say, for example, you go in the middle door and you'll have a choice of, the kitchen, the rumpus room, or a closet or something. And so you've got to look at these rooms and be like, okay, which room has a door on the opposite side that'll let me continue, or maybe some of these rooms have items I might need. And so the game is just kind of like randomly rolling these rooms for you, and you want to like try to go as far as you can each day in the house, because ultimately you want to figure out where the frick that 46 room is. But it's not just about like maximizing RNG drops, right? There's also more to it than that, because there are a number of items. Some of these items help you do certain things in the house. For example, some are just like no big deal. Like you might pick up a metal detector, and the metal detector will help lead you to small consumables like a little bit of money you can use in some shops to get stuff, or maybe you'll find a gem that you can use to open certain rooms. Or you might get something that's fairly important, like the magnifying glass, which helps you look closer at documents you may find in the house. Sometimes you pick up a piece of paper, or you can read it in general, but then there's like some scribbles at the bottom that are too small to read. But if you have the magnifying glass, you can zoom in a lot closer and you'll see top secret information that you might need. And stuff like this is important because many of the rooms have puzzles to them. And in fact, I'm not going to spoil anything. This is a spoiler-free review, but I think it's pretty safe to say that there is a lot more under the hood in Blueprints than you might initially expect. Because when I came to this game, I was like, okay, cool, like a little weird randomized room puzzly game. That seems really fun. I'm going to get into it. It's probably like a 5-hour game. I'll bust it out on the weekend and I'll talk really positively about it on the show. It'll be a good time. No. It's actually not that at all. It's way more. It is that, but there's also like levels upon levels upon levels to it. Some of the rooms have like bits of lore in them. Some of them have little micro puzzles. Some of them have bits to some macro puzzles, and more things kind of sort of get unlocked as you go, but also the RNG remains a factor. So there is a lot more to do in this game than you might initially expect. And for some people, that's going to be a great thing. For me, that was a bad thing. I am not really in the vein of games like Fez or The Witness or anything like that. Like those kind of like large scale, big brain, super deep Animal Well kind of puzzle games where like, yeah, you can play it on one level, but there's also like all this other stuff going on. I'm just not here for it, because I feel like the Blueprints is a game that really asks a lot of the player. It's one of those games to me that feels like it's a developer being quite clever and throwing down a gauntlet in front of the players saying, are you smart enough to figure this out? Are you patient enough to figure this out? This challenge that I've crafted over the last couple of years, can you decipher what I have done? Can you make sense of this? And for me, the answer is no. I'm just straight up no. When I come to games, I really like to have a certain kind of experience. And it's kind of hard to put into words, but I have games kind of broken up into like two categories in my head. Like there's one kind of game that wants to give you something, wants you to have a certain kind of experience, and they kind of do things to like kind of pull you in and keep your attention and keep you entertained. And then there's the kind of game like this one where it's the developer doing their own thing and they kind of let you into their vision and you can partake of it if you wish, but they're not really going out of their way to like cater to you. And that's kind of how I feel about Blueprints. Now, neither one is right or wrong. I'm not saying that I have a criticism of either style, but for me personally, I'm like a busy guy. I've got a family. I've got multiple gigs I'm doing that are not game related. I get tired and all this stuff. And sometimes when I sit down to a game, I just don't want to really like work that hard to play. Like I might jot a couple notes down or whatever, but like, that's about it. Like I'm not the kind of guy that does these like big brain puzzles. So I think that maybe just Blueprints is not for me, but I feel like part of the problem is that the randomness of the game makes it feel a lot longer and a lot more tedious than I think it needs to be. Perhaps I would be more curious about unfolding the mysteries of this mansion if it didn't feel like I got set back to square one every single time. So like I said, like you might find a bunch of items. Like for example, in one run, I had a lot of items. I had like the magnifying glass, I had a shovel, I had a bunch of money and gems that I didn't use. I had a bunch of stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, cool. I would like to keep this stuff and bring it back to the mansion tomorrow when all the rooms reset. That way I'll have a little bit of a leg up and maybe I'll get a little further. But no, like it all goes away for like no really good reason, right? Also, all of the rooms go away, and so you get back to square one. And so you end up doing a lot of the same stuff over and over. For example, there is a security room that you can find, and there's a computer. And if you find the password, which I did, you can enter the password and then get into the computer. But like you have to enter the password every single time. And I realize it's not that big a deal. It's like 8 letters or something like that. But just like it's annoying to have to do that over and over and over. Or like sometimes you will have see the same rooms, and you do the same thing, and you're kind of waiting for the RNG to generate like a room that you're waiting for. And sometimes it comes up and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you have the thing that you need, but the room doesn't come up. Or sometimes the room comes up, but you don't have the thing that you need. And sometimes you just end up dead ending because you are one key short, or maybe you don't have a coin that you need, or you don't have a gem that you need or something. And so I feel like a lot of the runs, and to be fair, I'm nowhere near the end of this game at all. I will not finish this game. Full disclosure, I've already deleted it and I've pulled the ripcord and I'm out. But like, I played this game for about 3 days straight, and I put a pretty fair amount of time into it over those 3 days. And I feel like at least half the time that I was playing, it was just like a run that didn't really go anywhere, that nothing really advanced. I didn't really learn anything new. I didn't do anything new. And so that was just like pure wasted time. Maybe I had really bad luck with the RNG, or maybe I was just too much of a dummy head and I missed a clue that I should have seen, or who knows what. But I really did feel like a lot of my time was just like randomly dead ending, or just not making it far, or not learning anything new, and then I just try it again. And that's not feeling like a good beneficial use of my time, which is already pretty limited. I mean, I don't really want to chip away at this over the course of a year to try to figure out the puzzles that I probably won't be able to figure out anyway. So I noped out of it after about 3 days or so, just because I could see the writing on the wall, right? Like, it was me needing to be extremely patient, me being okay with a bunch of like quote unquote wasted runs if I just don't learn anything and don't progress anything. And I just don't like waiting for the RNG to kind of all come together in the right way so that I can try out an idea that I might have had 2 days ago, but that I couldn't enact because the things didn't line up correctly, right? So maybe that bothers some people, maybe it doesn't. It did bother me, and I felt like overall Blueprints is kind of a cool idea, but it was a much larger experience than I was bargaining for. And to give you an example, and this is not a spoiler, but I talked to at least 2 or 3 different people who all said that it's possible to roll credits, I guess, at some point in Blueprints, but there's so much more to the game to figure out that they all have been... one person had spent, I think, 80 hours. I heard tell of another person who had spent more than 100 hours. And I was just like, no, man, no. Like, I'm not averse to spending that kind of time on a game, but only when it gives me the kind of, the kind of exchange rate that I want. I want to feel like my time is well spent, that I'm getting something back, that I'm not wasting my time, that I'm not asked to do anything that feels like it's not respectful of what I'm doing here. If I was a younger man, if I was like, let's say if I was 20 and I was feeling my oats and I was single and I had tons of free time and I had tons of people that I wanted to exchange theories with online in some Reddit thread or something like that, maybe this would be my jam. Maybe I would really think this was really fun. Maybe I want that kind of like mentally taxing large scale puzzle that I can prove my worth and conquer it. But that's not me anymore. I want something that's a lot lower ask of me, something that is easier to engage with, and something that I feel like is just more respectful of my time. Maybe I would be in this still if I didn't have so many failed runs where nothing moved forward, but I kind of question some aspects of this design. At least for me, I feel like there were a couple tweaks. If you could keep the items, if you could lock certain things down, if the pace moved a little quicker, if you could somehow alter the RNG to your favor, maybe you can. Maybe there's something that pops up later on. Maybe I didn't get far enough to see it. But based on my 3 days with it, I really quickly felt like my time was being wasted in a way I didn't appreciate. And I just don't have that kind of patience anymore. So I'm out. But I think Blueprints is an interesting idea. I think if you're the kind of person who likes Fez or The Witness or Animal Well or any of those like really, really toughy big brain puzzles, you're probably going to love this. And that's totally cool. Different strokes for different folks, horses for courses. This one is not for me, and that's A-okay. I respect what it's doing, but I am out. And there you go. That is my take on Blueprints. All right, next up is Ixion, Ixion. I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. I'm a really, really big fan of Frostpunk. Fucking love Frostpunk, which is kind of weird because it's not really a genre I engage with much. I'm definitely a console player to the core, and kind of a city builder slash survival slash management sim in the way that Frostpunk is much more prevalent on PC than it is on console. But there are some, and so I do tend to check these out when they come to console. Frostpunk was really like the end all be all for me because it had amazing themes. I thought the graphics were really cool and sharp. and they spent a lot of time on the UI making it playable. There wasn't a lot of moving the screen around, and so you could kind of focus on one large screen, zoom in and out as needed, but like it was mostly right there in front of you. And the menus and UI were just great, like very easy to navigate, very intuitive. You could really tell they spent a lot of time on the UI to try to make it approachable and not just to get lost in a bunch of menus the way that so many of these games do. So Frostpunk for me is like the gold standard. And I would love to play another one of those. I know that Frostpunk 2 is coming to console. I've heard kind of mixed on that. I don't know that it's going to be the kind of experience I'm looking for after loving Frostpunk number 1 so much. I'll definitely give it a shot when it comes. But in the meantime, it's not here yet, and I'm looking for something that kind of is in the same sort of basket, and someone recommended Ixion, which is why I checked it out. Ixion is very much like Frostpunk in space. Unfortunately, I do not think it measures up to that standard. It would be hard, admittedly, for any game to measure up that standard, but I feel like Ixion overall, and I don't mean to spoil my review of this so far, but I guess I will. It just feels like it's like 6 months away from being done. It just feels like really rough, a lot of bugginess, a lot of issues that need to be resolved. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. So Ixion, basically Frostpunk in space. What happens is you're on I guess it's like a ship, like a big ship. At first I thought it was more of like a space station. It's like both. It's like a space station that can travel and stuff. But like you're on this giant circular ship, and the ship is divided up into like 6 chunks. So if you imagine like a cylinder, you build inside the cylinder. And so if you divide that cylinder up into 6, section 1 is like just like 1/6 of the cylinder, and it's huge. So you can make all kinds of buildings and roads and all sorts of stuff inside the cylinder on the inside. And then you can zoom out and see the outside of the cylinder where you're like a big ship, and you can zoom out even further and you're like, you got a galaxy map. So you're like in the Milky Way galaxy, kind of looking at different planets and stuff like that. But you're in this ship. You're the new administrator of the ship, and they're doing a test run. They want you to do some stuff. And so you learn the systems. You learn how to build buildings. You learn how to find resources that are within the ship, and like how you build roads to connect up to the processing plant and the storage house and how those things connect up. It's pretty... I mean, I don't want to say it's straightforward because I got stuck a lot in this game. But I will say, like, you know, it very much follows the Frostpunk model of, here are some resources that we have. You need to bring the resources to the refining house. You go from the refining house to make whatever thing you need, and then you manage whatever needs in the city. So while you're on the tutorial part, which I will say is not a great tutorial, they kind of take for granted that you know how all these systems work. And there was many times when I was like, okay, you just told me to do something, but you didn't show me how to do it. Like, I don't know how to do it. For example, there was one point when they were like, the space station was really near the moon, Earth's moon. And they're like, oh, there's a thing on the moon. Go do the thing on the moon. And I'm like, how? I have no idea. It took me for friggin' ever to figure out what combination of buttons and menus they wanted for me to get to the moon when they could have just shown me. And there's lots of examples of that during the tutorial where I just feel like you're assuming too much on my part. I need you to act like I've never played one of these games before, because I am not a genre veteran, and I need you to show me all these things that you assume I already know. So that was kind of the first issue. But once you get through the tutorial, you start building roads and stuff like that. It all kind of comes together, and you're just kind of doing the basic Frostpunk thing. People will show up, and the little window will pop up and say, hey, we're the workers on the station, and we're mad because we want more homes. And so then you've got to like focus on building the homes, and they give you a time limit, like, you promised to do this in 3 days, and if you don't do it in 3 days, we're going to be mad. Or they'll say, oh, we're hungry, we don't have enough mess halls, we need more mess halls. Build one more mess hall that can feed 80 people within 3 days or 5 days or whatever, and do that and we're fine, and if you don't do that, then we're mad. And so that's kind of how the game goes, basically, which, again, if you played Frostpunk, is basically just like Frostpunk. And I know I keep saying that over and over, but I was just really struck by how similar this game is in tone and feel. I mean, swap out Space Station for Frozen Wasteland, it's kind of the same thing. But again, I feel like the tutorials were not great. I feel like the UI is not as good. There's lots of like menus within menus, and the way that they want you to click on things and move between things, it definitely obviously originated as a mouse type experience, which is fine. But I feel like with just a few tweaks here and there, I think it would be a lot more navigable and a lot more intuitive for people like me who are using controllers. I will say also, besides the UI needing a lot of work, there were just like a lot of bugs that happened. For example, I was trying to zoom in on one part of the screen, and the zoom just did not work. I could not get a good view of what I was doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just can't see. Like, it's really, really small because I was zoomed way out. And then I tried to like get in close, and the camera, it just did not work. It was like, I'm not sure what was happening, but that definitely needs to be fixed. It's just straight up broken. So that looking around, and the viewpoints were not great. So that was not well. Also, I will say that sometimes you're just waiting for stuff to happen in this game to the point that it's kind of like ridiculous. I was one of the earlier sections, I was building a factory or whatever it was. They were like, we need a tech tree factory and we got to do this thing. I'm like, okay, cool. And I started building it, and I had the fast forward all the way up to the max. I think there's like 3 or 4 levels of fast forward, and I was like, I maxed it out. I went up all the way to the fastest just to get this building built because nothing else could happen until I was done. And even at the fastest speed, it still took like a uncomfortably long time. I think they need to tweak that. Like, if you want it to go fast, it's got to go fast. I mean, sitting around waiting for stuff to happen is probably the least exciting part of any one of these games, and this has too much of it. So I think overall, I mean, I think it's like a basically good idea. I mean, Frostpunk is great if you want to follow in that mold. I mean, I think that's fine, but I think it just, at least on console anyway, just feels too rough at the moment. Weird UI stuff going on. Tutorials are kind of poor. The zooming didn't work, and so it was hard to see sometimes. Too much like dead time waiting for stuff to happen. I mean, it doesn't seem like a bad experience, but it's got a lot of problems, and I think it's just not quite up to snuff. So I might come back to it like in 6 months if they patch it and fix it and smooth it out. But right now, it just feels like kind of a very difficult, kind of obtuse experience that just isn't quite ready for prime time. So my few sessions with Ixion were just kind of just generally frustrating, and me kind of like feeling like, I wish this thing looked better. I wish this was cleaner or clearer. I wish this thing would hurry up. And it just didn't quite get there for me. So I think the developers are definitely on the right track. And I can't speak to the PC version. Maybe PC is a superior experience. It wouldn't surprise me if it was. But on PlayStation, where I played this, it just is not there yet. It is not fully baked. So I'm going to put a pause on this. Maybe I'll come back when it is has been patched a couple times. So there you go. That is Ixion, Ixion. All right, I know we're in the middle of the show, but it is kind of in the time loop. As I said earlier, and before today's episode, I am kind of recording these in bits and pieces these days. And in between the last segment and this one, there was a bit of a breaking story. I got some PR from a company announcing a brand new upcoming game, Star Wars Zero Company. This is by Bit Reactor. I believe they are a brand new studio. I tried to look them up. I didn't really find anything about them, so they must be just getting off the ground now. This is probably their first game. From what I can tell, they have some XCOM veterans, and they're also working with Respawn, and they're going to be published by EA. And the exciting thing about this, or I guess double exciting for me, is that this game, Zero Company, is going to be turn-based tactics. And hearing that there are XCOM people on the staff just couldn't surprised me more and couldn't make me happier. I'm definitely the turn-based tactics guy, as you all know, and I'm trying to think if there's ever been a turn-based tactics Star Wars game. I don't think so. Not a Star Wars expert, but I do play a lot of video games, and it seems like I would remember something like that, and I don't recall anything. So not a lot of details right now. There's going to be more details in about 5 days. There's going to be some kind of a show that they're going to announce more specs on, or some more hard facts. Maybe a trailer, who knows what. But this game is in production right now, and Bit Reactor is developing, and I'm very, very, very excited. I love turn-based tactics, and I am a Star Wars fan. Not a hardcore fan, but I definitely like Star Wars, and those two things going together would be great. In the PR image that I saw today, there was like a droid, there was a human, there was a Jedi, there was a Mandalorian, it looked like there was a clone trooper commando. So it looks like a good mix of people right in the very first image. So lots of promise there. And Star Wars is certainly a universe that I think we have not even begun to see the full limit of yet. So fingers crossed. I don't have any more information now, but thought I would share since that was pretty exciting. So there you go. Breaking news, Star Wars Zero Company coming from Bit Reactor. More info in about 5 days. All right, next up is a game called Rusty Rabbit. Playing this on the Switch. It is a 2D kind of Metroid. I guess it's Metroidvania, I suppose. Although it doesn't quite feel like one. You play Rusty Rabbit, although his actual name is stamp, I believe. And you are in a world where everybody is basically a bunny. The lore is that he is a rabbit who goes diving for junk in ruins that were left behind by the giants, which I assume he means humans, although I don't know that for a fact. He looks like a super cute and fuzzy bunny, but he's actually old, I guess, or at least as old as bunnies go. His voiceover sounds like someone's doing half of a Jack Nicholson impression, and he is very kind of rude and crabby, and it's very at odds with how cute and fluffy he looks. It's very weird. He's in this town that's kind of snowy. In the town, there's a couple places you can go, a couple shops, a couple people to talk to, and then you go inside the gameplay area. There's an elevator right by your house. You go down the elevator, and you get inside your mech suit, and you have this mech suit where he rides in the cockpit. It's got arms and legs, pretty basic looking, and you kind of run around in these chunks of Metroidvania level. So it's interesting that he's a rabbit, interesting that there's a mech suit, interesting that there's some kind of a post-human world, although not really. I mean, we're not talking about like The Last of Us with rabbits or anything like that. It just seems very cute and fuzzy all over the place. If you're familiar with Sylvanian Families, the animal figurine IP from a million years ago, this looks like Sylvanian Families, but with mech suits and with like weapons and stuff, which is kind of weird. So, rabbits and stuff. If that does it for you, then cool, check it out. But when you strip away the rabbit stuff and you get down to the gameplay, it's a pretty straightforward, by the numbers kind of Metroidvania. You start the game with a few more powers than you have normally, and then those get stripped away because your mech takes some damage, and so you get back down, knocked back down to nothing. But you jump and you double jump. You can punch things with your robot arm. I looked at the skill tree. The skill tree is actually surprisingly huge. So I don't know what lies in the depths of the skill tree because it's kind of covered up until you unlock each node one by one. The very first upgrade was a map upgrade, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not even sure what it did. It didn't seem like it did anything, but it's just pretty straightforward. Like the controls are not super tight. I had a little bit of trouble dodging. I mean, there is no dodge, or at least I don't have a dodge unlocked yet, dodging enemy attacks. And so I was taking some damage, and the climbing is fine. There's like a wall climb and a double jump and a wall jump. I mean, it's all just like pretty straightforward. You talk to other rabbits you meet inside the little Metroidvania area that looks just like kind of, hallways and industrial sort of stuff. But I mean, it's just pretty by the numbers. The story was not really interesting to me, and there was actually too much story. I felt like there was a surprising amount of talking, and I ended up skipping past the cutscenes after a while because I just didn't really care about it that much, and I wanted to get back to the gameplay. But the gameplay is pretty standard. Like, you're just breaking boxes. You have to get a disappointing number of key cards to make progress. You find power-ups here and there. You talk to people as you go, and you just kind of it's just pretty straightforward. There's nothing really remarkable about it other than the rabbit setting. So if you really like rabbits, or you like the idea of a post-human world, I mean, maybe this is worth looking into. But it ends up being so cutesy, it almost feels like a kid's cartoon at times. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it just wasn't really the vibe I was looking for. And, just to be brutally honest, I mean, the gameplay is just pretty straightforward. There's some crafting. There's, typical stuff that you would expect out of Metroidvania. And that's a really saturated genre. Like, it really is very saturated to the gills right now. And we've got some absolutely world-class stuff out there that's just, all-time bangers. So if you're going to play a Metroidvania, or even one that's even adjacent to it, I feel like that is a very tough market to break into. You've got to really bring some heat. And unless you are a rabbit file, and I'm sure there's probably a specific technical word for that, there just isn't a lot to recommend it, so I guess come for the rabbits if you like that, but otherwise it's just really straightforward. After I put it down after my first session, I totally forgot I was even playing it. And when I came back to it, I'm like, oh, this again. I'm running and jumping and breaking boxes and activating checkpoints. And it was just, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, let me just be clear. There's nothing wrong with it. And as the jaded critic who's played a million games, it just doesn't have anything that really speaks for it. I'm not a rabbit fan particularly. I don't hate them. I just don't like them. But other than that, there just isn't a lot to recommend. It's just very straightforward. So I guess maybe if you are looking for a Metroidvania to give to a younger player, or maybe someone who perhaps is not as experienced with Metroidvanias, or maybe someone who wants them a little bit more chill, or maybe somebody who just, is looking for something in a slightly different gear. I think that's fine. I mean, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I think it's just kind of getting drowned out by all of the huge luminaries in the genre, and it just doesn't hold a candle to those. And not many do, to be fair. Not many do. So, yeah, I guess, I don't know, Rusty Rabbit, it's a thing you can play. It works. It's cute. If you like rabbits, lots of fur. And I guess that's all there is to be said about it. It's a Metroidvania that works, and it's got rabbits. Okay. All right. Last game of the show is South of Midnight. Playing this on Xbox X. It is free on, quote unquote, free on Game Pass. So anybody can dip into it there. And I definitely suggest that you do. Spoiler, I think this game is pretty cool. Digging it a lot. This is a third-person action platformer. And it is set in the American South. I don't know about the time period. It seems, vaguely modern. No one's wearing suits of armor, and it's not, witchcraft times or anything like that. Modern times, it looks like. You play as Hazel, who is a young African-American woman, I don't know, early 20s maybe, or maybe even younger than that a little bit. She lives with her mom in a trailer park. I believe it's a trailer park in the South somewhere. And a hurricane comes, and it's just a real big storm, floods the whole place, and her mom gets swept away in the mobile home that they were living in. It's just the water just carries it away. It gets shot down the river. Very traumatic. And Hazel tries to save her mom, but she can't. It looks like mom is still alive. It wasn't like a death scene or anything like that. Just the mom it's shipped on down the river. Hazel can't keep up, and so she gets kind of lost. And at that point, the game kind of takes a couple turns into, I don't know, like mysticism. I don't want to say it's not magic realism, because I think there's more than just one or two little bits of magic in this. But it's like a modern, normal area that you would see in the South. But there are like supernatural creatures about. There is magic about. And it's not really a spoiler to say that pretty soon after beginning the game, Hazel realizes she has some abilities. I believe they call her a weaver. And this is like shown in all the trailers and stuff. I'm not spoiling anything. This is a spoiler-free segment about South of Midnight. So she gets these, I guess, knitting needles or crochet needles or something like that are kind of spiritual. They kind of like appear, and they're made of energy, I think. And so she can kind of weave the threads that are around her. They are imperceptible to normal people, but because she is special, she can see these. And in the fiction of the game, anytime that there's been some kind of emotional turmoil or sorrow or trauma, these threads that are normally there become knots, and things get gross, and energy gets bound up, and things get dark and nasty. And so she's going around trying to find her mom, and at the same time, she is encountering these knots, these twisted little balls of agony that are kind of scattered around the South, and she's doing her best to kind of unravel them as she goes. Talking about the action, I think the action is pretty good, actually. I think there's a cool kind of like little stop motion effect that happens. You can see it in the trailer. I think it's kind of a filter or something they lay on top of it. I don't believe this game is made with like actual stop motion animation, but it looks neat. And so when you're running and jumping and you see everything, that kind of little like choppy stop start to it, that looks like if somebody had made the whole thing out of clay, which I think is quite cool, actually. I really dig it a lot. And then, so you run around. They're not open worlds. They're kind of like levels. And I guess a better place to start this discussion is that I've heard many people compare South of Midnight to like a 360 game, like an Xbox 360 game in that era, where we had a lot of games that were like action-y games like this, third person, where you did not have an open world really. You kind of had a world that was not on rails, but kind of guided. Like it was a large area, but there was basically only one or two paths through. Lots of jumping, lots of platforming, lots of, hopping and bopping and hitting monsters and stuff like that. And this really harkens back to that era. And that's not a criticism in any way. I think a lot of games from that period are quite good and they hold up really well. And to be frank, I trying to think of the last time I've played a game that followed that template in modern times. I think we've really gotten into the open world or huge open area, or we've kind of gotten away from such a focused experience, but I think it really works. And I think there's a reason why it worked back then, and I think there's a reason it still works now. So I really kind of dig it. I like it a lot. So I think that's good. You kind of like you always see like a goal in the distance, and so you kind of make your way towards it. And along the way, there's little paths and there's small divergences. You can find little power ups as you go, which are like currency used to buy your abilities. But basically, you're kind of just going from point A to B to C, kind of in a linear path. And along the way, you'll meet certain people, or you'll have these encounters, or you'll go to a certain spot that they want to give you some story for. And they kind of just guide you through it, which I think is totally fine. I absolutely do not think every game has to be open world. I absolutely do not want that. And I think that was a very smart choice for a game, which is so narrative heavy like this one is. And it really is narrative heavy, I will say. So you have the main story of Hazel trying to find her mom, but like that's just kind of like what kicks off the whole game. Once she gets into this kind of chase down the river trying to chase that mobile home, she gets a lot of like divergences and she meets a lot of people, and it's all very magical and very kind of mystical, fantasy land. It almost feels a little bit like Alice in Wonderland, but just not that crazy, where she comes across like giant monsters. I believe that in one of the trailers, they showed an alligator that was as big as an island. It's got trees growing on its back. You meet this giant talking catfish who kind of ferries her from place to place. You meet ghosts and things like that. So there's all sorts of like spiritual stuff happening. And so I think that's really kind of interesting that they have this very like kind of grounded setting, but it's elevated by all these magical elements to it. There is combat, there's actually quite a bit of combat, more combat than I expected, to be frank. And I will say that if there's a part of South of Midnight that I'm on the fence about because I like so much of it. The thing I'm on the fence about is the combat, actually. I think the difficulty is tuned too high. There is a lock-on, but I definitely suggest everybody playing the game do not use the lock-on because it just will get you killed. It doesn't work in the same way that like it does in Dark Souls. But you'll end up going to like these little arenas and you'll be kind of walled in, and a bunch of like weird spirit kind of, sadness creatures or whatever will show up and they'll try to attack you. You're usually going up against several at the same time. It's almost never you're doing one-on-one, where a target lock would work in a one-on-one. But in this kind of situation where you're fighting a mob all the time, it just prevents you from seeing what's going on around you. Action is quite fast, a lot faster than I expected it, and the enemies hit hard. I believe there are 5 difficulty levels, and I am on the second one from the bottom. So I am not on the story level. I think I'm on the easy level, and I think it's actually too hard. I will probably bump it down a little bit. I suspect it might get a little bit easier once I unlock more power-ups, but in the beginning when Hazel is just fresh and new and she doesn't really have any powers, it's quite tough. I've actually died several times, as a matter of fact, where you're just running and dodging and you're getting hit, and these monsters have a weird kind of tell to them, and there's like projectiles, and it's pretty hectic. And I suspect that the team has tuned it too high. I think they probably all got used to the combat and kept bumping it up and bumping it up. But honestly, I think people approaching this should probably at least start on easy, if not story, and then work your way up if you really are feeling your oats, because I don't think the combat is anywhere near the best part of this experience. And if you're going to get stuck anywhere, you're going to get stuck on the combat redoing some of these missions. So just take it easy on yourself and turn it down a little bit. I don't think the combat is good enough to really want to master it in like a Dark Souls kind of a way. For me, it's more of like something that you do to kind of break up the action a little bit, but I really want to just keep moving and see the next story beat. So I don't really want to spend a lot of time on fights. And I have spent a little bit more than I would like to on fights. I'm sure somebody's like, get good. And okay, sure, whatever. But for my own personal enjoyment, I think I will probably bump it down just maybe like one more notch. Anyway, getting back to the story, I will say that the voice acting is quite good. I think it feels very organic and natural. Hazel's voice is very pleasant to listen to. I like it. The catfish has a real kind of cool, like strong southern voice to him. And I think that part is really done well. And the writing is actually quite good. In addition, they already have touched on many, many issues so far. And I'm only like maybe a third of the way through. I think there are 14 chapters. And I'm on chapter 5 or 6. I can't recall which. So not even like fully halfway through yet. But I mean, so far we've talked about like, family issues, intergenerational issues. Slavery definitely comes up in a very direct and obvious way, which I think is important to talk about. There's also family abuse. There's like broken dreams. There's getting out of a dead end situation. There's actually been quite a bit of territory covered so far. And I feel like all of it has been handled pretty well. And I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will say at the end of the first major chunk, I was actually kind of sad, man. Like I didn't cry or anything, and I have cried in games before, but not this one yet. But when I did get to that first chunk, I was like, damn, that really kind of got me. That was like genuinely sad, and I really kind of felt that. And I can't say that about every game. So kudos to the writers there for sure. Supplementing the script is a pretty amazing soundtrack. They really went all in on the music, and I think it was time and money well spent. The songs have a definite, like, some of them are kind of like rockabilly, some of them are like more just kind of south, some of them are kind of creepy ambient kind of things. But all of the music has been quite good so far. And then, this is the first time in a while where I'm like, oh, you know what? I should probably track down the soundtrack to this. I bet I would listen to this again and just kind of enjoy some of the music they have. And it's not just tracks they've taken from other places. I mean, maybe they did, but a lot of the pieces I've heard so far seem to be absolutely original music, which I think is great. Like, there's been some lyrics that were very specifically addressing what was going on in the story at that time. It wasn't just like some song that happened to match. It was for the game, clearly. So I think that was going above and beyond, and it's really, really paid off. I think the graphics of being in the South with the swamps and the gators and the trees, the cypress trees and everything like that really works. I think Hazel looks like a very strong, interesting main character. I think she has no problem carrying the lead here. The music is great. Script is great. Everything about it, themes are great. I've really had to stop and think about things a few times. So I don't know a lot about like specifically Southern mythology. I don't know if the Weaver archetype that we're talking about in this game is something that's actually from the American South. But I would be curious to find out about it. And so far, I think everything about South of Midnight is just coming together so well. Really liking it a lot. I really like the feel of it. I mean, the combat is like, that's okay. Could be a little bit better. But like when you're platforming, that feels really great. She's got a jump, a double jump, a glide, grappling hook, all sorts of stuff. You've got a little voodoo doll type guy that you can throw to possess people or to go into small spaces. She's got a pretty wide skill set so far, and I'm only like a third of the way through. I am very curious to see how this is going to grow and change and evolve. But everything about it just really, really working for me. So I guess if you are up for a 360 type experience, it's not a retro game at all, but I think it's retro inspired, or it's got sensibilities of era of design that we are no longer living in now. But I wouldn't mind seeing coming back. I'm having a great time. I think it's great that I don't have to cover like, the square footage of like Nebraska to get through this game. I mean, I don't mind a little narrow level here and there, or a focused push forward, because it, keeps the beats coming, keeps the fights coming, keeps the story beats coming. I mean, I think that's all really well and good. I think they do it intentionally and do it well. So far, I'm really liking South of Midnight quite a bit. I will definitely roll credits on this one, and it is on Xbox Game Pass. So if you've got an Xbox and if you have Game Pass, you got nothing to lose. I say give it a shot. You don't see something like this every day. Certainly not these days anyway, and I think it's worth a look. So check it out. South of Midnight, definitely thumbs up. I'll report back when I roll credits. And folks, that is going to do it for the games covered today. The game portion of the show is officially done. Yes, it is. But like most humans, I do spend a few minutes a week in front of screens that don't have menus or life bars. That is right. It is time for the TV and movie roundup. All right. What am I watching this week? First up, the son and I were watching Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. This is a pretty, I don't know how recent. It was like 2010, so maybe not super recent. A finite Scooby-Doo series made with modern sensibilities, where Scooby and the gang are in a town called Crystal Cove, and they are investigating mysteries, but there's also an overarching plot. It's not just Monster of the Week. There's a very, very Cthulhu-inspired overarching plot. There's mystery, there's backstory. There's also Monster of the Week in every episode for sure, but there's also threads going through the entire series, character developments, things grow and change. It's pretty interesting. It's not perfect. I don't like how the show starts off where Daphne and Fred are paired off, which is pretty normal, but also Velma and Shaggy are paired off, and that doesn't really make sense to me. I believe that Velma is canonically lesbian as far as I know. So that was kind of strange. I mean, not that people can't grow and change and go through phases, but it just doesn't seem to work in the show is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't end well, and they kind of just leave it. So I think they kind of bungled that part of it a little bit. Also, I will say that it's not really a spoiler, but like late in the series, Scooby-Doo meets a female dog called Nova, and she is just like a regular dog. And I can't even explain it, but there's something feels very wrong about Scooby-Doo having the hots for this dog that just seems like a dog. Like, she doesn't seem to have the human level intelligence that Scooby does. She doesn't talk. And something about it just feels weird and wrong. And I never got comfortable with it. It felt skeevy somehow. I don't know exactly why. Maybe because Scooby has so many more faculties than Nova does, but something about it just felt really weird. So I do not care for that. There's a lot of guest appearances from really famous people. I think Harlan Ellison makes a couple appearances, a few other places. Martha Quinn from MTV, if you're old enough to remember that. A bunch of people show up that are really surprising voices. And it's just generally fun all the way around. I really liked it a lot. And I think there's only, gosh, I don't know. It's like not even 60 episodes. It's probably less than that. It's probably something closer to 50 episodes altogether, if memory serves. So you get a beginning, middle, and an end. They get a great resolution. And it's just an interesting way to see Scooby-Doo in a different context, like a slightly more updated, finite context, which is kind of cool. So thumbs up to Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated. Then recently we watched Love Hurts, the movie starring Ke Huy Quan, who was he was a boy who played Short Round in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom a million years ago. He was also Data in the Goonies a million years ago, and he has grown up. He was most recently in, well, he's kind of going through a renaissance right now. He did a special that was on Disney, or a series on Disney. He was also in, what was it? Everything Everywhere All at Once, that had Michelle Yeoh. That movie was great. I think that was his big return breakthrough. I think he's been working in Hollywood off and on as a stunt coordinator and things like that, but this was his first time back in front of the camera in Everything Everywhere All at Once. So I love Ke Huy Quan. He's a great guy. It's impossible not to like him. I think he's great. But this movie was an unfortunate bomb. We knew it had bad reviews, but we went into it anyway just to support him. And also because sometimes, we don't agree with the critics. Sometimes we find joy in something that people say is a bad movie, or maybe we think a movie's not bad at all. You never know. This one was a legitimately terrible movie. I feel really, really bad for him. He's been on a winning streak. Almost everything he's been in has been really good. But this one was an unfortunate left turn. The writing just was weird. It was like kind of serious sometimes, kind of jokey sometimes. It seemed like they were trying to go for, I don't know, kind of a fable at some point, but then it was like a crime drama. It was like all over the place. Performances were like not good. The only main characteristic of the primary villain was that he drank boba. Like, that was his only thing. He didn't really have any depth to him. He wasn't interesting. The fights, it started out with like one or two pretty good fights, martial arts style fights, and then it just like went off and just, it got really weird. I think Marshawn Lynch was in it, which was fine. I think he's all right, but it was a mess. I don't understand what the director was going for. I don't even think the director knew what he was going for. Just the tone and the pacing, and by the time we got done with it, we all just looked at each other. We were just like, damn, that was bad. That was like really, really bad. So, oh boy, I hope that Ke Huy Quan picks something better next time. I don't know if he owed somebody a favor or something, but this was, oh man, this was a pretty bad miss for him. Last thing I will mention is the series Portlandia, which was really popular, I don't know, a million years ago. A comedy series based on Portland, Oregon, starring Fred Armisen. He of Saturday Night Live, and Carrie Brownstein, who, if memory serves, was a member in the band Slater-Kinney, which was really big in the 90s, I feel like, or maybe the early 2000s. So they get together as a comedy duo, and they just make fun of Portland specifically. It was really huge. It was really fun. I've lived in Portland. I've been to Portland. We live in the state over from Portland. And so all of the gags and the jokes and the observations they make are 1000% dead on, or at least they were when I lived there. So it's a very specific kind of comedy. If you don't know anything about Portland, I'm not sure how well it hits. I mean, it's weird and it's strange, and I bet you would still laugh, but it's like doubly good if you know like how fucking weird Portland is and what a strange city it is. I mean, I think Portland's motto is keep Portland weird, and I think that's probably the best motto they could hope for. So it's a great comedy series. It's like half-hour episodes. It ran for like 5 or 6 seasons at least, if not longer. And I think it's just really smart and goofy and bizarre and fun. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. And folks, that's a show. Before the closing music, we'd love for you to leave reviews, share it on social media, but most important of all, please recommend this show to your friends, because nothing beats good old word of mouth. And as always, I do want to get your questions and comments. I haven't done a question show in a while, but if you send in some questions, I would be happy to do so again. You can email them directly to me, SoVideoGamesPodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit me up on social media. I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky. It's my name, BradGallaway, all A's, no O's. You can also reach me in the SoVideoGames Discord, which is totally free of charge to join. Just hit me up, contact me through any of the channels I just mentioned, and I'll get you on board to continue the conversation. And finally, if you want to support this show and help with the cost of running this podcast, you can do that over at patreon.com/the SoVideoGames Podcast. Every single dollar helps with the hosting fees, and €1 helps that much more. All right, folks, that's going to do it for episode 434. Thank you so much again for joining me here on the SoVideoGames Podcast, and I'll see you next week.